So Apple held their annual Worldwide Developers Conference today in San Francisco. There was a lot of high expectation for this event because Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, has really talked up the product pipeline for Apple in 2014. So whatever was going to be announced today would essentially lay the groundwork for whatever brand spanking new device that Apple brings to market later in the year. So Apple announced a whole raft of new enhancements to both iOS and Mac OS X, which is now known as Yosemite. And some of those features might actually be familiar to anyone that has used services like Dropbox or WhatsApp or SwiftKey, which is a predictive typing tool. Perhaps the most notable service, which looks like another service, is called iCloud Drive, and that syncs together documents and data that you might get from different apps across different devices. And so this is very similar to the type of service that Dropbox actually sells. And what's interesting is that at one point back in 2009, Steve Jobs actually tried to buy Dropbox. The company rebuffed him, and then Steve Jobs essentially vowed to destroy the company through iCloud. Now that hasn't happened yet. Apple has had a lot of problems with its cloud service, but with today's announcement, there seems to be a real push to improve what it does with syncing data and documents in the cloud for consumers, and people at Dropbox might be a little bit worried by today's announcement. Another big feature that Apple announced today was in the side of communication and some features and enhancements to its iMessage service. And again, a kind of familiar feel to some of the features there, including a push-to-talk feature where you can press a button, talk for a little while, and then it'll stop recording and instantly send that little audio clip to whoever you're sending it to. It allows group messaging. It allows you to leave a group, which is something people haven't been able to do in texting on iMessage. Now, a lot of people see this as a direct threat to a very popular app like WhatsApp, which has more than 500 million active users around the world. And Voxer is another app that also does push-to-talk. So again, we see Apple taking on features that are already very popular thanks to third-party services that have already put them on iOS. And one other interesting feature is for the Apple keyboard. Apple is now putting in something called QuickType, where it will learn how you use language through texting and eventually come to predict the words you are about to text with a bar of 3 words at the top of your keyboard. Now, for anybody that uses the app SwiftKey on Android, this would be a very familiar concept. It is essentially what SwiftKey does. At the same time, though, as well as announcing that feature, Apple is opening the doors for app developers who make keyboards to sell those keyboards on the App Store. Until now, SwiftKey hasn't been able to sell onto iOS devices. So kind of a bittersweet opportunity for keyboard makers like SwiftKey. There are some people who will question whether Apple's being a copycat and creating these services. They're so similar to other third-party services that are already popular out there. But at the same time, I've talked to some developers who say, well, ultimately, you create an app, you sell it through the App Store, and if your technology is better than Apple's, then it should win out in the end. That applies to developers and services that appear to be under threat today, like Dropbox, like WhatsApp, like SwiftKey and Voxer. We'll just have to see if people do actually end up loving those services that Apple is bringing to market over the next few months, or if they actually prefer the services that are already out there.